Hello, my lovelies! It's Susanna, and today I want to show you with these 3 examples how to deal with the absolute value. Let's start with our first example. Here we have the absolute value of 100 plus the absolute value of negative 100. These vertical lines stand for the absolute value. These are no parentheses, so don't confuse this with something like this. This is something different. This is just the number 100 in parentheses, but these vertical lines stand for the absolute value. So how do we get rid of the vertical lines now? If you have a positive number in here, it's easy. You don't have to change anything. So the result is just this positive number. So the 100 is what we get from this here. Then we have the plus symbol. And here, this time we have a negative number in our absolute value. But it's also not too complicated to get rid of the absolute value. We just have to make this number positive again. So if you have a negative 100 in here, you just write down a positive 100 as a result. So the absolute value makes everything positive that is inside here. And now we can simplify this to 200 and have our result. To illustrate the absolute value, we can take a look at a number line, put our 0 here, and let's take these numbers, so the 100 here on the right side and the negative 100 here on the left side, and the absolute value represents the distance a number has from 0. So how far is the 100 away from 0? It's 100 steps. And how far is the negative 100 away from 0? It's also 100 steps. So you would walk from the 0 100 steps until you're here. So the absolute value here is the same from these 2 numbers because they are equally distant from the 0. Okay, let's take a look at our second example. There's a lot going on here. We have the absolute value of all of this, and inside we have another absolute value of this plus, and these are just parentheses. So this time we have a mix between the absolute value and parentheses. So we have to take care that we don't confuse any of this. Where shall we start? We start inside, so I write down these absolute value bars here outside first, and let's start here with our first absolute value. This time we have more than just a number in here, so before applying the absolute value, we first have to simplify what we have in here. So I write down the absolute value bars and we take care of this and calculate negative 8 plus 3 first. If you don't know how to do it anymore, you can always go to a number line. We have the positive area here to the right and the negative area here to the left. We start at negative 8, so we have our 0 here. We are in the negative part of the number line. And we want to add 3, so we walk 3 steps to the right to the positive area, and this brings us to negative 5 then. So the negative 5 is our result from this calculation here inside of our absolute value. Then we have the plus, and then we do the same with our parentheses here. I write down the parentheses, and we first calculate 2 minus 8. We can do this on the number line again. So this time we start at 2, and we want to subtract 8. So we will end up in the negative part here. We can first walk 2 steps, that brings us to 0, and then how many more steps do we have to take? We have 2, we want 8, so we need 6 more steps here, which brings us to negative 6 as a result of this calculation here. Okay, next I write down the big absolute value bars again, and now we can calculate the absolute value of -5. We only have a number here, so we know the absolute value makes everything positive that is inside here, so our result is just a +5. Then we have this plus -6. So we have just parentheses here, so we can connect the plus and the minus, and we know it will be a minus then, and write down the 6. Now we have a calculation to do in our absolute value again. So I write down the absolute value and we calculate 5 minus 6 the same way we did here. We get the result of -1, and then we apply the absolute value of a negative number is something positive, so just the 1. And then let's take a look at our third example here. Okay, maybe we breathe first before we start. We have a big absolute value here, and inside we have parentheses here, and inside our parentheses we have this other absolute value, and here is another absolute value of this. So we start inside, so I write down the big absolute value bars here, and then we start here with these parentheses. I write them down again. We have the 2 minus first, and here we can calculate what we have inside our absolute value. So I write down the bars and we calculate 2 minus 4, which equals -2. Then we have the minus here, and here again we have our absolute value, so we calculate what we have inside. I write down the bars. We have -9 plus 2, which equals -7. Then we write down our bars again and take a look at our parentheses here. I write them down again. We start with the 2 minus, and now we can apply the absolute value here. Of a negative number, we know it's going to be positive as a result, so our result from this thing here is just the 2. I write it down here. Don't get confused with this minus symbol here. It is this one that was in front of our absolute value. So the result of our absolute value is positive. This minus is just the minus we had before. Then we have this minus here. It's actually the same as here, because if we apply the absolute value here now again, our result is going to be positive. So just the 7. I write down the 7 here. So this minus is this minus here. Okay, now we take the absolute value of. Inside here, we only have these parentheses, so we can just calculate everything. 2 minus 2 equals 0 here. 0 minus 7 equals -7. And one last time, we take the absolute value of a negative number, and we get just the 7 as a result to our problem here. I hope you know now how to deal with absolute value. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Take care!